bridge the gap with everybody. All the policies that I have ever talked about, and Mr. Trump is going to be on board with this too, we talk about things that are good for everybody, not for this group or that group. The whole concept of picking and choosing winners and losers is something that I think is antithetical to what we believe, don't you? And you know, that simply would not happen with the Trump administration. We would be looking at ways to do things that benefit all Americans, that create an equal playing field, equality of opportunity. That's what we're looking for. And that doesn't mean that we're not sensitive to people who are downtrodden. In fact, we're very sensitive to people who are downtrodden. And we'll be putting in place things that will allow those people to ascend. Many people have been placed in a position of dependency for generations. They don't even recognize what's going on. We have to change that.
Dr. Carson, do you see Carson?
Over of Latin American countries, what are you doing to reverse that situation? We are fighting in the Middle East, but they are now in our neighborhood. What we are doing to reverse the China influence and Russian influence in our neighborhood?
Well, I'll let Mr. Trump answer that question.
Dr. Carson, do you see a future for yourself in politics? And even if there were no promises made as part of this endorsement, would you be interested in serving in a potential Trump administration?
Well, I'm interested in saving America. My concern is our posterity, all the people who are coming after us. And we are destroying any possibility of the American dream for them with the policies that we're doing. So I would be very interested in helping to achieve the goal of saving America and making it great.
As part of a potential Trump
Absolutely.
administration.
Dr. Carson, you talk about two Donald Trumps.
Oh, Catherine, I didn't notice that was you.
Nice to see you. You talk about two Donald Trumps, the one we see in public, the one we see in private. Does that worry you for the American voters? Should the voters know that second Donald Trump, and then as that relates to you, you and Mr. Trump have sparred on a number of issues, whether it's Muslim database, whether it's religion. Are we now seeing a second Dr. Carson with this endorsement?
I don't think so. But my point being that there's a different persona. Some people have gotten the impression that Donald Trump is, you know, this person who is not malleable, who does not have the ability to listen and to take information in and to make wise decisions. And that's not true. Now, you might get that impression from, you know, looking at debates and looking at some of the public appearances, but he's much more cerebral than that, and a much more reasonable person than comes across. But as you well know, because you've heard me talk about it a lot, you know, the media, they're very skillful at painting people certain ways. And it may not be who that person is at all. And that person can spend all of their time trying to change the media, or they can just move ahead. And I think he's decided he's just going to move ahead and focus the attention on the American people, not so much on the media. I think that's the right way to do it.
Will you be campaigning with Mr. Trump? Will you be getting the campaign trail with him?
We will do some campaigning together, absolutely.
And you said you would be interested in...
And the last question?
You said you would be interested in being a part of a potential Donald Trump administration. Have you been promised a running mate slot or a VP slot in exchange for this endorsement?
We have not talked specifically about a role other than you know, being involved in helping formulate policies and trying to make America great. That's the real key. And as was said by many, it is great, but it is nowhere near as great as it can be. And a lot of the things that are in place and that have been in place and growing over the last few decades have led us to a place of incredible stagnation. We don't need to be there. And you know, if we once again begin to embrace those policies that will create the atmosphere for entrepreneurial risk-taking and capital investment, you will see an explosion like nothing you've ever seen before. We simply haven't been doing that. I don't think it's going to be that hard. And I don't think Mr. Trump thinks it's going to be that hard either.
So thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Great honor. And go outside. We have coffee and drinks. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
All right, that was Donald Trump, and you saw it started out with an endorsement from Ben Carson, his former opponent, turned into a wide-ranging press conference. A few more comments from Ben Carson there, both of them saying they have buried the hatchet. Going to bring in now Judson Phillips. He's the founder of Tea Party Nation. He's also a Ted Cruz supporter. So Judson, a lot to absorb there from what we just watched, but the bottom line here is that Ben Carson, somebody who has a lot of in good standing with social conservatives in the Republican Party, now saying he supports Donald Trump for president as a supporter of Ted Cruz. What do you say about that?
Good morning. Well, first of all, having to endure a 45-minute Donald Trump infomercial, while I was doing that, I took a look on social media, and if you look on Ben Carson's Facebook page, for example, the majority, I'd say at least 80% of Ben Carson supporters are saying things like, "You've broken my heart, you're selling out, and we just don't agree with you on this." So I don't know how much of an impact Ben Carson really has, because let's face it, Ben Carson had his surge, and then he got out of the race, not because he was at 20%, but because his popularity had plunged down to almost nothing, and his fundraising dried up.
You know, we see, though, there were, and this was an aspect of the press conference that both of them talked about, there were some harsh words that had been exchanged, particularly from Donald Trump toward toward Ben Carson during this campaign. Now they talked about burying the hatchet. Ben Carson there talked about seeing another side of Donald Trump, a side that maybe the rest of us don't see when we just watch him on stage, we just watch him at these press conferences. You have Ben Carson endorsing him. You had Chris Christie, somebody else who Donald Trump had some choice words for during this campaign, also coming out from. Does this say something, though, especially with Ben Carson talking about seeing this other side of Donald Trump? Is there a side of Donald Trump, maybe, that we don't see publicly?